So there was this extraordinary document called NSSM 200, written by Henry Kissinger, produced by USA in the 1970s, which advocated strongly for population control population control being in the US national interest to promote abortion and contraception in developing countries, to stifle the resources of other countries, to be in the US national interest. This document was brought out in the 1990s, and it shows a lot of the flawed thinking in providing population control for other countries to stifle those countries. The document laid out a very aggressive US foreign policy advocating strong population control in other countries, being in the US national interest to stifle and prevent these countries from developing and growing. Very flawed thinking, but thank goodness with President Trump, this is no longer the US policy. So here's what it says. The National Security Study Memorandum 200 is a 200-page document, the implications of worldwide population growth for US security and overseas interest, compiled by the United States National Security Council under the direction of Henry Kissinger, the US National Security Advisor, on December the 10th, 1974. And the document explicitly laid out a detailed strategy in which the United States would aggressively promote population control in developing nations in order to regulate the national resources of these countries. Well, it was adopted in 1975, targeted 13 nations for it to be implemented under, include the legalization of abortion, indoctrination of children, mandatory population control, financial incentives for countries to increase their abortion, sterilization and contraception use rates. Well, NSSM 200 also declared the United States was to cover up its population controlled activities and avoid charges of imperialism by inducing the United Nations and various NGOs to do the work. So what has this resulted in? It's resulted in Western countries funding abortions to countries where it's illegal, lobbying and pushing lawmakers for legalization of abortions, giving sterilizations and contraceptions without explaining the negative effects. And with the huge demographic changes in the last 30 years, this has meant the violation of human rights for millions of people. And this document called for the US to have unfettered access to the natural resources of developing nations too. You know, having spent billions to control the population with developing countries, basic healthcare priorities such as drinking water have been underfunded. You know, if Western nations are to give money to Africa, they could use their funds to create jobs, sponsor education, provide infrastructure, hospitals, rather than the destruction of the unborn child.